Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to follow that earlier presentation from Tony. I'm not sure how I'll manage to step up. I'll give a perspective from a practitioner in the rural development perspective, and it's to stimulate thought and questions and maybe a context in the rural development area and in relation to rural development and innovation in relation to social farming. It's, I suppose, a combination of of my views and thoughts on it, on social farming within that context, and it's more or less to stimulate. It's not an academic presentation, and it's to try and link it to the kind of practice and the context for rural development and local development, etc. Leitrim Development Company operates here in this county. There are many of these local development companies around the country, and this is the mission statement. It's recognising a shared commitment and diverse experience. We strive to stimulate social, local, economic and rural development throughout the county for the benefit of all, particularly those who are marginalised, by empowering them to become engaged in development opportunities which meet their needs. There's quite a lot in that. The company, I suppose I'm going to give a general introduction generally to the company, how it operates very briefly. I'll talk a little bit about rural development in its context and the understanding of social farming in that context. And I'll talk a little bit about innovation. There are academic papers on all of this kind of material, and you can go into them in great detail. Just talk a little bit about innovation in social farming, and then generally issues which arise, and that will really pass the debate on to a political a policy arena where many of the decisions will be in the future and are coming from. Leitrim Development Company operates contracts from the departments, various departments, statutory agencies throughout County Leitrim, in the rural area which is County Leitrim. Here's a photograph of Gardice Lake. It's near Ballinamore. It's a very rural county. Our purpose is to support the people of the county in whatever manner that is, whether it's to develop a local community centre, whether it's to provide rural transport, whether it's to help people access training, if it's to help people get back to education if they left early, if it's to support the traveller community, if it's to help people get the skills together to apply for jobs through the Job Club. We have a wide variety of programmes to assist people in all aspects of their lives throughout the county. We have contracts, about 28 contracts with various state agencies, Department of Social Protection, HSE, the National Transport Agency, the Department of Environment. We have the LEADER programme, local community development programmes. I'll go into some of them. So that's a very brief outline of Leitrim Development Company. When we move into the area of rural development, I suppose the concept is defined in many different ways by many different people, and many people take different views of it. But in general, you could say it refers to the process of improving people's quality of life and the economic well-being of people living in relatively isolated and sparsely populated areas. So we do that on a daily basis. And I've highlighted words here which I'll take into a definition of social farming so that the context of what happens in these areas can be seen within social farming. More recently, rural development includes the provision of a wide range of public good, and that's in the broad rural community. And examples include, say, the Rural Development Programme operated by the Department of Agriculture, where farmers are supported to enhance and sustain the environment, to provide clean water under the Nitrates Directive, to provide environmental protection on SACs and HAs, and also to provide countryside access. These are public good which aren't paid for by the users. Well, you're going to pay water charges next year. But in general terms, these are public good. So rural development stretches across a huge domain when you bring in all these aspects. So we have the quality of life. We have people in defined areas, and there's an area-based approach to it. There's also the public good and community. There's also a very strong level of integration among actions and across sectors, and this is where social farming can and has become a strong element of rural development in that it's on the cusp of two sectors, two main sectors. It crosses many others in that it's health, agriculture, justice, and various other sectors, but it's on that cusp. So there must be multi-sectoral action. Cooperation. It's vital that there's cooperation from all these sectors, and cooperation is part of the leader methodology. No one element can fix the problems or develop solutions for people to implement. Innovation is a change in the way things are done, and networking. So these are important elements of the rural development methodology through LEADER. For instance, this is the sensory garden in the hospital here, developed by a local community group, funded through the rural development programme. So the patients in the hospital are now engaging in this garden and enjoying this garden due to the fact that a local community group developed it for their benefit. And that's a cooperative project on an innovative basis to help improve people's quality of life in the local area. Social inclusion and local development, two elements that I mentioned as important in this rural development area. Under the social inclusion programme, which is also well known, and the local development, the LCDP, the local community development programme, which is operated also through the local development companies, there's a very strong focus here on targeting, and that is finding solutions and supports and directing supports, very focused direction on those who need it most and who have that disadvantage from the population in general. There's a flexibility at local level, in other words, to provide local solutions for local people, to provide that need in response to the solutions. Again, back to the rural development, where there's very distinct differences between local areas. And that can be the difference between Leitrim and, say, Galway, the difference between Leitrim and Wexford. They're rural areas, but they're substantially different in their nature and characteristics. There's a very strategic and catalytic role in these programmes to work with people and using limited resources that are available in those programmes to lever and champion change. And that includes assisting in policy change. In relation to partnership, again, it's back to what I already said in the LEADER methodology. There's a collaborative approach between the public, the private, representative organisations, advocates, to ensure that all voices are listened to, and indeed the people who the solutions are being provided for. And that brings me on to the integration and multi-sectoral approach. It's a holistic response through those programmes, and that this ethos has built up within the local development companies and these programmes over, I suppose, the 17 or 18 years that they've been in place. There's also a very strong focus on equality and the respect for diversity and recognition of human dignity within those programmes and how they're operated and how they're implemented. Enhancing inclusion, and that leads to the enhancement of inclusion within their own community and reduces such barriers. And that's very important to reverse that sort of barrier that has built up in people's consciousness in general. And we see that happening. We have a photograph here from John Farr's farm in Lisburn. I see he's here. Innovation obviously leads to issues because when you're moving down the road faster in most cases than other things happen, you do come to a point where you get quite frustrated. But policy is changing, and the policy documents that we have strongly indicate change and innovation is required. And that's been led by economic change and economic development and this whole pressure to rectify the fiscal issues in our country. We also see that actual change and reform can be much slower than you anticipate when you read these policy documents. And you can get, it depends on your view of life, I guess, but you can get caught up in seeing the bright lights of the future with the electrification when you read these documents, and then you find that the change and reform is much slower. Economic impacts are not clear, and we hear a lot of talk about the money following the person, the reform that's going on. It's still very unclear what this actually means. Okay. And with social farming, we're across very many sectors, so there's no real home. We're trying to provide a home here on farms for it, and we are building those on those challenges, but that certainly produce challenges. And there is general frustration in line when those things don't follow policy. And some of these policies here have been mentioned: the vision for change, new directions. This is the change for personal support service for adults with disabilities, and the move on from congregated settings. So in the Irish context, of course, there's regulatory issues which affect activity and which can impact, such as insurance, health and safety, and they can affect the development of small-scale enterprises. And we have been dealing with those through the project. In many cases, insurance is one particular one, quality, bringing quality certification, that kind of thing. So these things can be highly relevant in the context of the provision of social farming. We see, small-scale food producers finding it very difficult to access markets due to this kind of regulation. But to conclude, it is amazing that living an ordinary life is an innovation. It's hard to believe it. We're going back, but it's very hard to believe that living an ordinary life is an innovation. It sounds strange to even say it, but it is taking root across a wide range of sectors and improving the quality of life in many rural areas. Thank you.